Our next topic, dear viewers, hello again. I can remember some startups in the Medtech sector whose pitches I was allowed to moderate, and I was always very impressed when it comes to the possibilities in medical applications. I think any one of us who at some point feels the first signs of aging would wish there were a spare parts warehouse with his body parts, right? Just like the $6 million man in the 70s, and I don't know if you remember this guy here, a NASA pilot who had his legs, one arm and one eye replaced by high-performance implants, and then, of course, saves the world several times. So, but it doesn't have to go that far, to be honest. I don't have to be the fastest person in the world. I mean, yeah, would be cool, but honestly, what if you could reproduce a knee in its original quality? What if you could recreate a heart true to the original, or optimize entire vascular structures? Will that ever be feasible? All exciting questions, of course, but at least as far as the $6 million man is concerned, more in the realm of fiction. But there's a very realistic question. What can be achieved today with additive manufacturing in medical technology? Where are the limits? And what is urgently needed to overcome the limits? What about safety, patient tolerance, and long-term considerations? And is it the manufacturing method or the material or the process as a crucial factor? In our Medtech panel today, with the topic Medtech in AM, reality and fiction, from everyday use cases to future perspectives, chances out of the corona crisis, we want to address exactly this topic. We have, of course, invited guests for this purpose who can certainly provide us with information as they are experts in their field. And I welcome in the studio, hello Özlem, Dr. Özlem Weiss, Managing Director of Expertants. Hi Özlem, good to have you here. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Great.
Great to be here.
But it's not only you, we have digitally connected Güngör, Cora, Chief Digital Officer at Ottobock, and Dr. Cora Lüders-Theuerkauf, Network Manager Medical at Medtech Additive. Hello together. Hello both of you.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Thanks a lot. Hi. Thank you, hi.
So, Güngör, I hope you heard the introduction, and so I have to start with you, sorry, because you see it's my main topic for today. Is the $6 million man still fiction? Or what do you do at Ottobock with regards to additive manufacturing?
Yeah, the $6 million man, I think this is nice science fiction. And I think this TV series is a couple of decades old. And it will be also science fiction for maybe the next decades.
Okay.
Here at Ottobock, we're working as a 100-year-old startup on transforming ourselves and also the industry. And this is why we have extended our products, especially the prostheses, in a digital way that they are now much smarter, that we are connecting the patients with the orthopedic technicians. So this is one stream. And on the other stream, we are developing new platform solutions from scan to 3D print. And based on that, we are creating more and more applications. For example, orthesis for children, orthesis drop foot for elderly people, and this is what we are doing. So this means coming from two sides, developing the core with more digital solutions and extending it with new possibilities like additive manufacturing.
So Arno Held mentioned yesterday that additive manufacturing is like the gateway to get digitization into reality. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I've seen that. I think it's one of the gatekeepers, because in this decade, I think it's all about bringing the great technologies together. And for me, innovation is always if you have a cross-section of new technologies, and within that area, I think this is where great innovations are happening. And this is what we are seeing also in other industries. So therefore, from my perspective, it's additive, but it's plus. And this could be a smart device. It could be also an intelligent modeling of these parts combined with 3D printing. I think this is opens up the new possibilities.
Thank you. Özlem, I mean, it was not only Güngör with Ottobock who inspired me for this introduction, as well you, because in 2017 you gave exciting lectures on the title, The Future Secret of 100-Year-Olds, Body Parts and Surgical Navigation. Sorry, I needed to take that up because it's exactly what I talked about.
Exactly.
But you have now a different focus in your current job and with the background of your studies, of course. What is the focus of your work with regard to additive manufacturing in the medical field?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me here and for the kind invitation. And yeah, to answer your question directly, my focus is different today, yes. During the last years, of course, I worked with medical device in AM industry. And the third topic you mentioned in the beginning, startups, was also increasingly part of my work. So as I cannot look back with my company back to 100 years of history, let me quickly give a short introduction of myself to understand my today's focus. I'm a chemist. I have worked with materials throughout my entire life, and had worked during my PhD on material science. And after that, during a time span of more than a decade, I worked in different roles in medical device industry, in corporate world, and as entrepreneur. And I had the great opportunity to support many medical device developments in terms of technical development, as well as in terms of developing new businesses. Quite a few were AM related. With my first company, IBD, my team and I were involved in many dental projects. So there is a next link to AM world. And there, at some stage, we faced increasing demand from the AM sector as such for regulatory support, and interestingly, a lot of support demand choosing the right material for a given application, a given medical application, so to say, how to qualify a material. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it was the next logical step to found my second company, Expertants. And we have the aim to deliver consulting, regulatory services, as well as trainings in that field.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much, Özlem. Cora, with your work, you contribute directly to the development of additive manufacturing in the medical technology sector. What is the current focus of your work? That would be interesting. And I need to ask, because you have probably the most broad overview of the industry in the Medtech sector at the moment, what is the impact of the current situation on the Medtech sector, your experience?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me briefly introduce you for first medical growth additive and mobility growth additive. For those who don't know us, we are an international network that focuses on the possibilities of industrial additive manufacturing. We are very user-orientated with a focus on needs and specific use cases driven by our more than 120 members. And what we want to do is to strengthen the awareness for additive manufacturing, especially in the sectors of mobility and especially in medicine. And we have the very high standards to jointly solve problems for which there are currently no solutions so far. The medical division has been founded 1.5 years ago and consists of 3 working groups with very, very active members and participants. And we have the working group Materials, which is focused on metals, polymers, ceramics, biomaterials, and so on. And second, the working group Approval, focused on certification, automatization, standardization. And the last one so far is the working group Use Cases, which consists of actors focused on prostheses, orthoses, dentals, and surgical models, for example, anatomical models, medical devices. It's a very heterogeneous group. And what's new, next January, we will start with another working group, which is called Hospitals. And this working group aims especially to employees of hospitals like physicians, nurses, technicians, but also the administration staff. And coming back to your question, what is our current focus? Our current focus is to offer information and a platform to exchange and to meet at the moment, since there are no physical meetings and fair trades conferences and so on at the moment, it's absolutely important for us to be present and to make offers to our members, to give them the opportunity to communicate and to meet each other, even virtually. We do this within our online webinars. We have an online webinar called Additive Inspirations with several keynotes over the last months. We have had a very great hybrid event, our annual meeting, which consists of a physical and in parallel as a virtual meeting. And we have so far virtual working group meetings for the next months. And the other question of you, the impact on some industries, such as aviation or automotive, is extreme at the moment. So many companies stumble and recover only slowly. The situation for the medical technology looks a little bit better, and the specific potential is seen especially as suppliers of the automotive sector are now expanding their portfolios toward medical products. And this is very interesting. And AM is able to show its potential so far, including its speed, this high speed. So I definitely see the AM in medicine during the Corona pandemic as a door opener for the next steps.
Great. We will come back to that later, but first a question to Özlem. Cora just mentioned working group 1 has to do with materials. I guess you are involved, or
yes.
Might be involved. So we discussed previously, there are so many startups talking about medical grade material. I heard that so often, I can't imagine you are denying that this is real, but can you rely on that standard, if you want to call it, and concentrate fully on the application if we get material offered?
Well, let me first have a short comment on the startups, as this is very a focus of us currently. I'm regularly evaluating startups which are applying for a business plan competition, and many of them have medical focus, and increasing numbers are coming from the AM sector. And these startups, I would like to invite to involve medical device experts. I would be happy that if that could be us, of course, but there are also others. At very early stages of their medical device development, involve the experts so that the experts early, so that you avoid development cycles. These repeating cycles will cost you time, money, and nerves. And yeah, let's come back to the materials. Choosing the right materials from the very beginning is so crucial. Medical grade polymers, as it's used together with the polymers, it's a problematic term. It's not a technical term like the grading we know from a titanium, where a given grading implies the suitability for a given medical application. Medical grade polymers, it's just a marketing term. So you cannot rely on a polymer that you buy and as a raw material and want to process to become a medical device or to be used in medical applications. You have to really carefully inspect the material specifications. A medical grade polymer, it's just saying that it's compliant with some regulatory requirements. It does not tell you anything about the intended application. So many uncertainties that bear many risks, why the megaton-driven polymer industry, together with users, together with medical application developers, and as well as universities, have decided to develop an own guideline. There is a new VDI guideline, which I would like to stress out here, the VDI guideline 2017, called medical grade plastics, actually, and it defines the requirements. What does it mean if you have followed the guideline and you label your polymer with that term? So we include this topic in future in our trainings, and I would recommend to carefully inspect not only the technical, but also the documentation, the test results, and the labeling, of course, of your material.
Great, thank you. Cora, you mentioned the automotive manufacturers or suppliers that change their production lines in order to help during the Corona crisis. Everybody talked about AM because of the provision of respiratory solutions, mask, door openers, and something like that. Is this sustainable? I mean, this was helpful, I guess, but considering the long regulation and test process we have in the medical sector, is that something we will see over the next years, or was it just a support for the very beginning?
Well, it depends on the product. Some of the products manufactured by additive manufacturing are quite sustainable, like door openers, for example, or other daily equipment. Others less so, as has been demonstrated over the past few months. Respiratory is a good example because spare parts for ICU ventilators can be generated by additive manufacturing, of course, like adapters, tubes, ventards, and so on, but they can't be used so easily due to the specific materials. They have to be certified, you mentioned it, and the certification process takes its time. And lastly, it's a question of liability. And so the manufacturers of the ventilators are a little bit afraid of spare parts coming from other companies which are not certified and which don't have any certificated processes. So not everything that is well-intentioned makes sense to manufacture additively. And we have seen many products whose approach was very creative indeed, but will not be very successful in the practice. And but at the first moment of the pandemic, when supply chains collapsed, AM was able to show its potential. I mentioned it before, its speed and, of course, the great helpfulness of the whole AM community. And I mention again, I definitely see AM in medicine during the Corona pandemic as a door opener and a pathfinder or a pioneer for the next steps, but Corona is not all, and we should go back to normal standards and normal issues. And there will be a time after the pandemic, sure, and that brings us very quickly again to the personalized medicine and the use of individualized medical devices, which are now hopefully receiving more attention and attraction due to the additive manufacturing. And these individual use cases can, again, push the AM technology and can contribute to the future of medicine. And Sascha Wetzler mentioned it yesterday. It is absolutely necessary to bring AM in medicine into a serious industrial process for the next months and years.
Absolutely true, and this is something we want to address later in this panel as well. But first, last question to Güngör. I mean, you experienced two revolutions in a very short time, considering your business, because first was AM, because I can imagine if we're talking about prosthesis in the past, it was a high complex manual labor that needs to be done in order to create one of those, to individualize it for a certain person. Then came AM, and you were suddenly able to adapt those prostheses exactly to the need of the patient. And now is your part coming to it, and this is boosting it to a level I can't imagine. It's digitization. So why is digitization so important in that context and medical technology? And in your opinion, how should it be implemented wisely? Let's call it wisely.
Yeah, I try to explain how we are trying to implement it, and then we can check how wisely this is. More than 100 years we have spent is, we can describe it was analog, so very handcrafted way, where you have a special expert which has been trained over years, and then he can build the prosthesis and adopt the prosthesis based on the requirements of the patient. And now digitalization opens up completely new ways. One is just the measuring. Instead of measuring by your hand, you can measure by a scanner, and then the scanner can create through another software program automatically the design for a 3D printed shaft or for a 3D printed prosthesis. And after you then have a connection from that software, which is modeling this kind of part to a 3D printer, you have a completely digital process chain. And based on that process chain, if you set it up once, then it's super easy to set it up multiple times. And this is where scalability kicks in. If you do not have that kind of scalability, then you are more in the analog world, because then you have to train each and everybody, like we have done in the last decades and century, on how to do it. And then you are very slow in adopting and bringing this kind of innovations then to the market. So therefore, digitalization, for example, on the prosthesis side or on the orthesis side, has the digital data entry of the patient and his body part. Then you have in the cloud computing, which then creates the file, which you then can also further optimize on your screen. If you have the final version of that file, it's all digital. So nothing has happened in real life. And the patient who is with you, he can be there next to the orthotic technicians, like to the dentist, who's also creating some very similar solution in the dental area. And then out of that, you just sort of say get connected to a printer, which has a certified material, which has a certified production process, and then create the part. And the next visit, you have then the final part then with the technician. And then comes the fitting process. Yeah, so you have to think always end to end. You even can capture the fitting and the first gates and gate analysis of the patient, and also store that and analyze that also digitally. And then, as I said, the full picture is from scan to model to print, and then also the fitting process. And if you have optimized that, then it's super scalable. So this is the way how we try to, our way, to put all these technologies together. And this is why I've mentioned in the beginning, where we have that overlap of technologies which comes certainly together just for a specific use case and for a specific requirement of a technician and the patient.
But you go even a step further, because you can control afterwards the device, let's call it the device, the prosthesis, digitally and optimize and do service as well digitally, if you want, right? If I understood correctly. I mean, we heard now the full digital range of AM, and that we can build it up all digital. Cora, would be a question to you. If we talk about regulation and test procedures and entry of a Medtech product into practice, it's a pretty long way, especially here in Germany, where we have the strict regulation. It's a long, sometimes frustrating way to get something working, and we don't want to cover these emergency cases where the doctor can decide on emergency basis. But if we see the digital approach Güngör just explained, wouldn't it then not be possible to control the process in a way that we can shorten that process tremendously? Because, I mean, if I can simulate it with all the data I have from the past on a real patient database, isn't it then secure and we can give it out? I mean, of course, it's easier to say that in an automotive context, okay? But isn't there a way of simulation combined with artificial intelligence that we can speed up the process of bringing medical solutions into practice?
Exactly. I think this is the additional kicker. So whenever you have established this kind of digital process chain and created a platform, and then you put further applications on top of that, and then you can use that AI to kick in and then optimize it on its own. But yeah, as you described in the beginning, first of all, you have to overcome the hurdle of regulatory. So everything what I described, from the scanner to the modeling software to the 3D printing process and the fitting, this all has to go, or mainly has to go through regulatory processes, has to be approved, and this takes time. So this is slowing us and everyone else in the industry down. But whenever this is achieved, then it's much easier. But to coming to that point might take also us and all the others a couple of years.
But Cora, I need to readdress it to you and add a little part, okay? What I was rethinking after our first discussion was, I mean, all the startups I met in Medtech, most of them are not doctors. Most of them do not have any education related to medicine. So do you see that as an issue? Because I can imagine I'm super creative and I invent now a machine that, I don't know, prints heart valves or whatever, and I give it to you and say, hey, it works perfectly. I checked with Özlem before the material, so everything is fine, okay? So I give it to you. Would you trust me because you have a biomedical background? Would you say, yes, Sven is right, creative and right?
Of course, I would trust you, and I'm sure that you're highly creative, and that's brilliant if it is so. But the communication between doctors or physicians, hospitals, and the companies is very, very important. And this is what I mean. We are in our network very user-orientated, and the users should be in the foreground, and the experts should be in the foreground. And they gave us the use cases, what they need and what they want to have for the future, like specific medical devices, instruments, or anatomical models. And then after this step, the industry will come and support the users with their problems, and they support them with potential solutions and creativity and so on. So the communication and the opportunity to exchange the experience from the medical side as well as from the technology side is very, very important.
Yeah, I think in your industry it's always interdisciplinary, right? I mean, you can't prevent it because let's say somebody says, I have this application here and it's great. He needs to talk to you, Özlem, if it comes to materials, because somebody needs to have the knowledge to know whether this material would be applicable in a human body or around a human body. So how is this communication running? I mean, you are in this working group, and how do doctors who have an idea or startups get in touch with two of you and say, here, I have an idea, how can we do that? How's that working in practice?
Well, in fact, there are some best practices, but also there are some negative examples, like very creative startups just starting printing or producing a device or a medical application, some devices for medical application, and then rushing into the market, which are then prevented from regulations to enter the market. Definitely. So, from my personal experience in the last years, in the beginning, it was like not only medical-wise, but there were so many new machines in the market. They were had definitely some safety issues. Later, the new materials added into. I would like to come up with one keyword. That's the platform thinking. I'm sure that Güngör would like also to add something to that keyword. As long as you work on a platform-based system, you ensure not only quality, but you open up doors for new applications. And there you make sure that the integration of all these disciplines are also ensured on that platform. And from the company's perspective, developing a platform first gives you the basis. Let's maybe think of a house. Yeah? You have the base where you have the right materials. Then you build up a safe house with all the parts and components, which needs to involve safe processes, stable processes, and in terms of platform thinking, automated processes. So many dental applications, so many medical applications, patient-specific parts are still there are still manual steps involved, which bear, again, risks later on. However, so let's finish that house with the roof, then you have the regulatory requirements, and then with that whole thinking, next, if you would like to introduce new products, you can just integrate them by referring to that equivalency, which is allowed to do by in the medical device sector. You refer to the equivalency of a already in the marketed product, and then you bring up new products based on this platform.
Great. Güngör, before we discuss this platform thing, we have 3 questions of the audience, and I want to share that with you so that we don't forget it before the panel ends. But I would like to introduce one of the questions because we were talking about regulation, platform, and frustration. Sorry, I mentioned those 3 words together. Sorry for that. Because I met a startup once, and they had a fantastic idea, and I talked to them, when is that going to market? And he was like, I don't know, because I'm starting here in Germany, and it takes a while. And then a guy next to him said, come to the US, we do it much quicker. So is that an issue, Cora, that you are facing in your community, that the really good startups would go rather to the US in order to be quicker? Is that quicker over there?
It's not all the time quicker. So the FDA has also to certify the processes like our MDR here in Europe. And this is not a specific German problem that it's not fast enough. It's a European problem. We don't have enough notified bodies. So it's not so easy. But again, also in the US, it's also not so easy because they have the same procedures. Maybe they offer a little bit more help with going into the market, but it takes also time in the US.
Okay. So here's a question from Jefferson. What can additive manufacturing contribute to developing countries such as Colombia, Mexico, Chile, in Latin America, or in African countries in Medtech? Is there an initiative going on, or what are the activities in that point? Cora, probably you as an overview.
Is this a question for me?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we saw indeed additive manufacturing processes in developing countries or in regions with crisis and civil wars and so on. This could be a very high potential there to print spare parts or again, prostheses. Güngör will confirm this, for example, in a local way. It's not very difficult to send data and a printer to these regions and to print this for. And we have lots of examples, like, for example, clamps for umbilical cords after women giving birth. It's very easy to provide these additive manufactured clamps, or stethoscopes, which can be printed very easily, so done in the Gaza region. They are much more cheaper than conventional devices with the same technical equipment. So we see that additive manufacturing can support these developing countries, of course.
Great. Güngör leads us back to the platform idea. I mean, if you have a platform and you can give people access to, then you ideally work internationally, right? It's no longer a topic where you say, we just let Germans do this work here together. So a platform can be used all over the world. We see other platforms in additive manufacturing already very successful. Do you have a platform running that you are pushing by Ottobock, and how is this working?
Mm-hmm. I think the platform-based thinking is now coming more and more into traditional industries. And if I'm looking back on additive maybe 10 years ago, it was an R&D topic. And in the R&D sector, where no one is interested to share insights. So every company wants to buy a 3D printer and don't tell anyone else in the world what they are doing in the R&D labs with that. So this is the fundamental thinking out of the beginning of the last decade. And now we are switching more to an open platform where different partners are coming together. And this is, I think, also where Özlem is pointing to, because here on that platform, you can bring not only suppliers and customers, you bring also partners and suppliers of suppliers. For example, material suppliers, even raw material suppliers, to create new solutions around, let's say, the most promising applications. And then this year, COVID unfortunately kicked in, and immediately at least 3 digital platforms popped up. So, for example, EOS, HP, but also Siemens. Siemens, for example, they've introduced their AM network platform, where you can pick up the STL file and then select any printer in their network, and they have quite a large number, the same with the others, and then just order it. So it's really become from, you have to make first contact and then contracts one-to-one, and then you swap to a platform, and then you can purchase parts. And this is for a crisis situation very helpful. If you think that in the next level, then we have to talk about collaboration and cooperation to really speed up also development in that platform. And in the platform, you have not to team up with anyone and everybody. You have to select the ones which are most fitting to your requirements. So we have 3 kinds of platform. Number 1 is really about, so to say, developing together with selected people. Number 2 is what have started this year, the production platform. And then number 3 is creating a full digital process chain and letting then others also use it for their part and their applications. We are not yet on the third topic, but we are heading to that. And then there will be a time where we will introduce our full platform and then step by step open it up.
Great, thank you. There's a question from Anas. Can the regular quality factors and standards and audits in medical manufacturing apply on the AM production in medical? And I would combine that with a platform question again. Let's say they can, so the normal standards can be applied to AM production in medical. And I'm a material producer, or I'm offering materials. Can I then go into such a platform and verify what I've produced regarding, because you mentioned VDI, that they implemented the standard. Can that be a platform thing too, where you check it out?
Yeah, definitely. This could be, like, the platform could be the base for a given medical application or medical device to be produced later on. And then with a AM materials supplier, you could offer your material. It could be the same technical specification as the other raw material being used in another industry, but you qualify your material based on the medical requirements, and then you have an interface. You show your material can comply with a given list of materials, and then you integrate it into the platform, plus you qualify the material regarding the AM standards in terms of production safety, which we have quite a lot in the meantime. And this gives you then the whole picture. At the end, you can be sure that the material or the part to be that has been developed by the AM procedure, and AM is then just the production method, makes closes the loop to have produced a safe part at the end finally.
Great. Cora, I remember last time you mentioned you developed advisory, let's say, guideline with steps to regulation, right? If I remember that. Could you probably refer on that quickly?
Yes. In our working group approval, we developed a so-called decision tree. I think that's what you mean, yeah? A decision tree concerning the MDR and especially the Annex 8, the classification rules. And they are very complicated to read. There are lots of pages to read, and we tried to simplify it a little bit. So we developed this decision tree with easy questions concerning these rules and articles. So you have yes and no questions. And so you will find very quickly and very easily the product class in which your product will be taken in, like class 1, class 2AB, or class 3. So we developed it right now, and then we want to offer this on our website for our members, but also for externals and non-members in the future.
Great. Okay, so there's another question. Cora, we recently talked about FDA needs to confirm as well. The question is here is what exactly do you mean by that? Could you explain a little bit further? Probably you quickly explain the difference between FDA and our regulation and what that means for.
Okay. I'm not an expert in regulation. That's clear. Yeah. So I have read a lot of stuff for the MDR and in some cases for the FDA. So that's what I mean. In some cases, it's easier to bring your product in the market of the US because the FDA can be a little bit quicker in the certification process, but that's not all. So it's also important to be here in Europe, to stay here in Europe, and to support the technologies here in Europe. And so far, the MDR is our regulation device, and there are a couple of notified bodies which support you, like the TÜV Süd, TÜV Rheinland, and so on, and they will help you with your certification processes. And in some cases, like the TÜV Rheinland, they also offer, because the European sector is not in all ways very complicated. They offer a shortened certification process for some protective equipment, like for the face shields. They offer a specific certification process which takes only a couple of days for the certification, and I mean days, not weeks, which is very, very quick. And you can ask them to support you with your product.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much for clarification. Güngör, I must ask again, I mean, you are at the where the things are happening. Might it be possible in the near future that we replace fully functional parts of our body with AM?
You mean healthy
And
parts?
I don't ask that for personal interest, one of the questions here. So.
Okay. Difficult to answer, because we are focusing only on patients, users which had an accident, or where they need to have an orthesis or prosthesis. So we always have that medical touch. But to answer that question, I'm also looking left and right. I think there will be a symbiosis between, for example, the solution which Elon Musk with Neuralink is pushing to, because here they have detected the possibility to read in real time the neural network in your brain, which is then giving some micropulses then to your body parts. For example, if you are running, if you are walking, if you are lifting, even if you are jumping. So you can train yourself just by downloading the way how you have to activate your muscles to jump as high as possible. That might be for basketball players quite important. And then if you can adapt that with, let's say, exoskeletons, and we have also exoskeletons in our portfolio, then you can create really strengths and power which might be close to the $6 million man without paying $6 million.
Okay. Sorry for stressing again on the $6 million.
No, please.
Just a question to all three of you, probably a quick statement from each of you. What are the hot topics of Medtech in the next 1 or 2 years, Özlem?
With regard to AM application, it's definitely the patient-specific custom-made devices. Dental was a pioneer in that field years ago, and we're seeing more and more body parts being replaced by patient-specific designs that have been produced on additive manufacturing machines. And together with new materials, more and more being qualified and certified for a given application, I'm sure that we will see more parts being, let's say, produced by AM manufacturing methods.
What is the most used material?
Of course, still alloys, as it's just the most mature material, but I'm also seeing a lot of more new polymers entering the field, like PEEK and related. What is still an orphan and on a more academic level, and I personally would like to see, as it's having followed it closely due to dental application, it's the ceramics. We are waiting for the breakthrough for ceramics.
Great. Cora, what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, I totally agreed with Özlem that the personalized medicine is in the foreground, sure. For me, the bioprinting is one of the most interesting fields in this AM technology, creating tissues, creating, for example, organs, which what is at the moment future for us. It happens and it works in some cases, but if we will be able to generate an organ due to the lack of organs here in Germany is very severe. It will be a very great alternative to the conventional system of donation of organs.
True. You should follow the next panels about Israel, because in Israel they just printed the first heart, fully 3D printed, so quite impressive. Güngör, what is your opinion? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, of course, orthesis and prothesis, what else can I say? Because I'm active in that sector. What I'm seeing also as a latest trend is based on what we discussed earlier on the platform. So I think more partners are teaming up because additive is not a self-runner. So people like from the material development, people like from the machine manufacturing, but also bringing expertise from different industries together. I think this is what is currently going on behind the surface, behind the curtain. And here I'm awaiting really for the entire industry, not speaking as Ottobock, but as an AM expert, which has some insight, that more innovations will come in the next year, which will then boost the Medtech sector, and then startups and also grown-ups like Ottobock will participate from that.
Great. So time is running out. Thank you so much to all three of you and the audience for the interesting question. There are a few left and we will forward them to you so that you can answer them. Please make extensive use of the chance to exchange during the Formnext. To all three of you, much success and a lot of good new innovations in the next couple of years. Looking forward to see you again. And we will go on with the program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.